It's the late 1680s, and there's this guy, Jacob Leisler. He's a German immigrant and a pretty successful merchant in New York, and he's got some serious beef with the English elites. He's thinking, personally, we ain't gonna let this slide. Due to all the evil and corruption he saw the English elite spreading, in 1688, England gets a new king, William of Orange, and he's Protestant, unlike the previous Catholic King James II. But news travels very slow at the time, giving Leisler his chance to slide in and take control of the colonial government. Saying he's doing it in the name of King William's, he also had a crew of middle-class merchants and tradesmen backing him up. Then he took control of Fort James, basically making him the big boss of New York. He even sends a letter to the king, expecting some applause, but the king ends up ghosting him with no reply. Another example can be when William Penn went to Pennsylvania in 1682. And I'm not even gonna lie, William was low-key a real one. He'd be seeing the Native Americans in Pennsylvania, instead of purging them and conquering the land, that boy showed tremendous amounts of respect for the Native Americans. Having dialogues with them, treaties, man, he truly didn't see the Native Americans any differently than how he saw his own people. Although some things couldn't be helped, misunderstandings sometimes take place, and it brings along clashes between the settlers and the Native American tribes. And this ain't what William trying to stand for. He trying to spread the peace, but sometimes it really can't be helped. Although there were Native Americans that were actually being cooperative and were willing to hear William out on his little peace proposal. But all in all, the peace didn't last, especially when the British decided to take the land by force a couple years forward.
The New England colonies were one of the very first colonies here in the Americas. So like you could call them the OGs, like, oh, we were here first, right? Whatever. So basically they're made up of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Plymouth, and New Hampshire. And like a little backstory on them, they're Puritan pilgrims, right? And like the Puritan pilgrims, they like have their own little religion going on, but like the church didn't like that. They're like, you need to follow our religion. They're like, no, like I don't want to do that. And basically, they were being persecuted, and they could have easily chosen to go somewhere where they wouldn't have been persecuted, other than like all the way in the New World. But they were like, you know what? Let's go to the New World. So they go to the New World, right? But the thing is, the New World is already kind of being occupied. So they arrive at Plymouth in 1600s, but someone's already in Plymouth. The Native Americans. And so like the Native Americans are actually really cool about it. They're like, oh, like no, you can chill with us. We'll like teach you our ways and all that. Like they did Thanksgiving, I'm sure everyone knows about that, where they like taught them like how to farm and all that, because they didn't know any of it. Like they just came in empty-handed, and the natives taught them so much, right? But basically, Europeans being Europeans, they wanted more and more and more, so they took more land. They started enslaving the Native Americans, and that's when King Philip's War started. The war began in June 20th, 1675, and it was like a final resort. Like they didn't want to do it, but basically there were heavy casualties on both sides. Like there was destruction of houses, like burning down. Everything was crazy, right? And this was all over Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. It was all over the New England colonies. But I feel like that's where they had an advantage, the colonists. Since they had something called the New England Confederation, they were a lot more organized. They would communicate, keep in touch, like, oh, like this is going on. Okay, we'll help you over here, that type of stuff. So it was very bad. There were a lot of casualties. The war finally ended in April 12th, 1678. So 3 years of war. And it ended when King Philip's son was captured and executed. So sadly, the Native Americans didn't win this war, this revolt, this rebellion, whatever you want to call it. They sadly didn't succeed. They were assimilated into English culture and European beliefs and European society. That's how it ended.
The Stone Rebellion happened in South Carolina during 1739. It was the largest come-up they had in the colonial American times, and after raiding the firearm shop, and rocked like 20 white folk, they proceeded to gain more followers, and it was like 20 or like 60 deep in a group at the beginning. When it all started, it was just like a group of 20, and they was like, nah, like we're not doing this no more. So naturally they just ran away and rebelled. And first they rocked like a bunch of white people, and they was like nah, like this is our land. Like we don't play like that no more. And so when they killed these white folk, they put their heads on some poles and put them up, and it was like, nah, this is our block. And eventually, they gained more followers and a bigger group, a bigger organization, and eventually there was a major distribution, like Drake, and they ended up, everybody, the white folk, the militia, and the rebels, they ended up putting their blicks up, and they spun for each other, and went back and forth. In the end, the rebels, they lost, took the L, and eventually, some of them escaped, most of them didn't, but they wanted to come around acting scary, and they got their life taken. But eventually, there was South Carolina passed a series of laws called the Act of 1740. It was to control and brainwash all of these enslaved Africans, and take their life away from freedom and a bunch of other things, being happy. And they chained him up and was like, no, you're not. He's like, you're not doing this anymore. And so there was like, stop playing with us, like, we're superior, and you're not gonna do this anymore. And they cut all their heads off, and I was like, just put them on the rope. And they said, this is who we are. We don't play like that. And that's it.
So what would be the best colony to live in? After some discussion, we decided that the middle colonies would be best to live in. Why the middle colonies? Well, first of all, the rebellions weren't as bad as the ones from the other colonies. They had a more peaceful approach. Same with the Native Americans. Even if it was only for a short while, they had land agreements, traded with one another. There was also a really diverse population due to the fact that there were a numerous amount of settlers from different European countries, such as the Netherlands, England, Sweden, and Germany. There was also religious freedom, again due to the fact that there was such a diverse population, so there was obviously going to be a lot of different religions. Education is also a really big one. Not the very first public school, but the idea of public schools were opened in Pennsylvania. Those who wanted to get a higher education were able to go to college and get it.